Don't stop.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm Zach Randall-Friedman, the host of Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay. And today I have a really great guest. He's so great, I actually bought all 3 of his books. And let me tell you why I did that before I tell you who he is. So I feel like there is a shift that is happening in the world where not everyone, but I think a lot of people are finding spirituality in a bit. And I don't mean like religion. I think people are actually moving away from religion if I'm totally like being out there. And I don't want to sound like, crazy and woo-woo and all this, but I think because of the algorithm of the guests that I have and what I search on social media and TikTok and Instagram, the things I'm getting and the podcasts that I listen to, the Breakdown podcast by Mayim is so amazing. And every guest she has on there, I love her podcast. Mayim is who played Blossom in the show in the 90s, I guess it was, or was it 90s or 80s, late 80s? So she has a fantastic podcast with Jonathan Cohen. If you have not listened to it, you should, because I think she's really fantastic. But she talks a lot. I think the way that her and Jonathan think on her podcast is how I think. All these people are coming on her show and they're talking. And I've had some of the same guests that she's had on my show. Martha Jo Atkins, Angela Ford. There's a couple other people. I have a guy named Vinny who died for 90 minutes. He's coming on my show in September, and he was on her show. So we have a lot of similar interest. And I think that she sees this shift of people, of the way they're thinking. So it's not just like you're born, you live your life, you die, you're cremated or put in the ground, and then you're dead. And that's it. Nothing else happens. And then you go to heaven or hell or whatever people think in like a Christian religion. I think that the whole disclosure thing that even the U.S. government is coming out with about aliens, that's another shift that people, because I think all these years people were so scared about what was going to happen if people found out that aliens were real. And nobody is blinking an eye. It's not like, I think people were scared that it was going to break the whole religion thing. And I don't know. I think if you still want to believe in God or Jesus and you still think that he's coming back one day, do it. I mean, who cares? That's you. And do whatever you would like to think. Just don't push it on anybody. And I also think there's a lot of, I love the conversation. I would love to have somebody on my show that talks about we're living in a simulation. I know that's really far out there, but there's some super smart MIT graduates, professors, Harvard, huge, extremely smart people that have huge careers that have talked about us actually being in a simulation. And it's made me think. It's a little bit of a conspiracy theory, and I know I'm getting way, way out there, but I think being able to feel the energy and to heal yourself, I got a little country there for a second, to be able to heal yourself is possible. And Dr. Bradley Nelson, who I interviewed today, has talked about how we all have these negative energies in us. And he wrote 3 books. And I have bought all 3. I have bought so many books to read this summer, and I'm going to get through all of them. I'm actually have started Dr. Bradley Nelson's book, his first one, The Emotion Code. And it's fantastic. And he really kind of teaches you how, or what it means to kind of heal yourself. And a lot of the things that we have wrong with us is because of this built up negative energy and stuff. So I will let him explain it in the interview. I think he did a fantastic job explaining it. I was kind of hanging on to every word as we were talking. It's one of those interviews where if it wasn't my podcast, I would love to listen to it because I think he's really, he's onto something, and he's fascinating. And I love his whole story, how he actually got there too. So listen to the interview. I would love to hear thoughts about what people think about whenever I interview people like Dr. Bradley Nelson. So send me a DM on Instagram and tell me what you think about this episode. or leave a comment on the podcast. Also, the more ratings that I get for these podcasts, if you're enjoying them, the more people that get to hear them because it pushes it out to more people. So enjoy my interview with Dr. Bradley Nelson, and I will be back tomorrow with another new guest. Thanks for listening. Hi, thanks for joining me in the Everything and Anything in a Bit Gay podcast. Today I have a guest who has impacted millions of people. Welcome to the show, Dr. Bradley Nelson.
Well, thank you, Zach, for having me on. It's great to be here.
So I have done a little bit of research on you, obviously, as coming on as my guest, and you started off with one book or one practice of doing, and we'll talk about that. And now you and your wife have kind of gone and expanded on that. So let's talk about the first one, the emotion code. Let's tell I know what it is, but tell my audience what this big global movement is.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I was a computer programmer back in the early 1980s.
Okay.
And I had a business called the Computer Tutor, and I would go into people's businesses that had purchased a new IBM PC, for example, and they didn't know what to do with it. There was no software back then. So I would write the software, and it was a great job. Had a great time. But my real path was to be a healer. And so eventually I went to chiropractic school. And I remember in school, one of my instructors my neurology instructor was up at the board, writing. He talked about how the brain's a computer. Yeah. And I was a programmer. And I remember thinking, wow, the brain is a computer, huh? I thought, I wonder if we'll ever have the technology to be able to tap in to that computer, because that would be such an amazing way to help our patients, right? Because the information must be in there about what the body knows or what the brain knows. And I thought, probably not in my lifetime, maybe in 200 or 300 years, maybe we'll have that technology. Little did I know that's exactly what I was going to be spending my whole career on, right? And so when I got into practice, I was just kind of radically open to anything that might help my patients. I was studying everything that I could. Ancient things, modern things that had been discarded, things that had been frowned upon, whatever. And I was open to trying anything to help my patients. And it gradually began to dawn on me that within each patient was a computer, really, of sorts. A computer unlike any computer that I had any experience with. But what I found was that I could ask questions and I could get answers from this internal computer. And I didn't invent this. I didn't come up with this. But it was something that I kind of serendipitously came up with while other people had come up with it as well over the years. And so I spent about 18 years just communicating, asking the subconscious minds of my patients what it was that they really needed. Mm-hmm. Because I was just trying to fix them. And I figured that was my job, right? That's why they were coming to see me. And it was really fascinating because what I found was that the single biggest common denominator for all of my patients, no matter what they were suffering from, physical pain, low back pain, neck pain, carpal tunnel, whatever, to depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and post-traumatic stress disorder and eating disorders and self-sabotage of all kinds, and also diseases, every disease process that I saw in all those years and since then all these things had an emotional cause or an emotional component that was part of the cause. And it was really amazing. I mean, I remember one of the very first times I saw this was a woman that came in to see me who thought she was having a heart attack. I'd seen her before, but it had been a couple of months. And suddenly one day she shows up, she's got crushing chest pain, difficulty breathing. Her left arm's totally numb, left side of her face totally numb. And we were right near a medical center at our office. And I told my staff, look, we might need an ambulance, but give me 1 minute with her. And so I started asking some questions of her subconscious mind. And we primarily use muscle testing to do that. Mm-hmm. And the subconscious mind essentially is a binary computer. And so it will return a strong muscle if the answer to a question is yes, or a weak muscle if the answer to a question is no. For example, Zach, if I were there with you, you could hold your arm out parallel to the floor. And if you were to say, my name is Zach, that'd be true. And so your arm would be strong if I pressed down on it.
Mhm.
And I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners have seen this kind of thing. If you were to say something untrue, like my name is Bob, you wouldn't be able to resist my downward pressure on your arm, right? And so I've got this woman. It looks like a heart attack to me. But I started asking some questions. And in the emotion code, we have a list of emotions, a chart of emotions looks like this. It's got 60 emotions on it. It's divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. So I asked, is the emotion in column A or column B? I got a column. Is it in an odd row or an even row? Got one of those. Is it, row 1 or 3 or 5 or whatever? Identified the row and the column really quickly, and then went down the emotions, or 5 emotions in each cell, and it landed on, I believe it was grief. And I needed to know more because I asked, do we need to know more about this? And her subconscious mind, the answer was strong. It was a yes. So I traced it back and found that it had occurred 3 years before. And at that point, she burst into tears. And she's crying and she's saying, I can't believe that I thought I dealt with all that. I can't believe that's affecting me. I said, well, what happened to you? She said that 3 years before, her husband had been having an affair. And she found out about it and confronted him with the evidence, and the whole marriage just blew up, and she ended up getting divorced. But she was really, really deeply in love with that guy, was planning on being with him forever, and she couldn't believe that he had betrayed her. So as far as she was concerned, that was ancient history. She'd even recently gotten remarried. So what I did is I just swiped down the middle of her back with a magnet 3 times to release that emotion down the governing meridian, which runs straight down the back. And the feeling came back into her arm and into her face within about 3 seconds. And the chest pain was gone, just melted away. The difficulty breathing was gone. And about 10 minutes later, she left the office after joking with me and my staff. But I remember after she left, sitting at my desk, and my head was kind of spinning, thinking, what in the world did I just witness?
Yeah.
What was that, right? And that was a trapped emotion. And since then, I've seen that kind of thing thousands and thousands of times. So what we know now is that we know more about what emotions are. If you go back to Albert Einstein, he said, the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. And Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And see, Einstein and Tesla understood that really everything in the universe ultimately is just made of energy and frequency and vibration, right? Well, emotions are energy, frequency, and vibration. So if you're feeling an intense emotion, if you could insert some kind of a special probe into your body that could measure all those frequencies, it might pick up, okay, it's anger, or that's frustration, right?
Yeah.
And so normally what happens, Zach, is that when we feel an emotion, it's always in response to some kind of a stimuli. We're thinking about something, someone says something, we see something, whatever. And an emotion begins to well up inside of us. And that emotion is really coming from the deep subconscious. And normally what happens is it's kind of like an emotional loop, this whole emotional experience. We start to feel an emotion, some stimulus occurs, we start to feel an emotion. And normally we just kind of acknowledge that emotion and we allow it to dissipate its energy and go away. And that closes the loop on that emotional experience. And so that experience is over and we're ready for the next one. But sometimes what happens is the loop gets interrupted. Sometimes an emotion comes up and we don't want to go there. And so we stuff that emotion, we bury it, and we go somewhere else, right? Well, that emotional energy is still unexpressed now in the body. And we call that a trapped emotion. So another way that emotions get trapped in the body is when we have an emotion that comes up and we decide to artificially enhance the emotion. So maybe someone cuts us off in traffic and we start to feel a little bit annoyed. And then we decide, you know what? That person shouldn't have cut me off. And then it gets bigger and bigger. And pretty soon we fly off the handle. And those are the situations, we've all done this, where, when it's all over, we're thinking, gee, I shouldn't have flown off the handle there. I got to get a better handle on my emotions, right?
Yeah.
That'll also create a trapped emotion. And then the other circumstances where something happens that's just overwhelming, someone dies, or you know, that happens in life. Intense things happen. So any of those three things can create a trapped emotion. So what happens to us is we all develop emotional baggage. And the emotional baggage that we develop then manifests for us in all of these different ways. So what I found that I think is so interesting is that, if you look, for example, at a phone, this is a computer, right?
Mhm.
And how do we communicate with it? Well, we see things on the screen and then we can touch the icons and so on. And so it's a touch screen interface. I'm sitting at my computer here, right? It's got a screen where I can see things. It's got a keyboard where I can, type things. So that's called a screen/keyboard interface. But every single person has this computer inside of them, but there's no screen and there's no keyboard. So how do we get messages from the subconscious mind? And we get messages through our symptoms. In other words, pain is probably the most common way the subconscious communicates to us that something's wrong. But it could be any of those other things that I mentioned. Any physical, mental, or emotional kind of symptom is really not the problem. It's what's going on inside. And so it's a totally different way of looking at the body. But I learned that that's absolutely true, and that's absolutely how it works. And the single biggest common denominator for all the things we suffer from is our emotional baggage. And so that's why I wrote the book, The Emotion Code. It originally came out in 2007, and then the hardcover came out, I think, in 2019 or so. And then my wife helped me, we recently published this book called The Heart Code.
Okay.
And this book is about the heart. And this is really such a fascinating topic. When the Emotion Code book first came out, there was one chapter about the heart in there and something that we call the heart wall.
Okay.
So at that time, we knew eventually we'd need to publish another book just about this topic because it's so, so important. So let me explain. First of all, let me just say that back during the years I was in practice, before we knew about this heart wall phenomenon, there were times when I would come away from working on a patient and I would just have this feeling that there was something that I didn't have access to. There was something that I was missing. I didn't know what it was, but there was something that I was locked out of. I didn't know what it was. So one day, this is in 1998, my wife and I were at this conference, staying in a hotel room. She wakes me up early on the morning of this conference and she tells me that she's had a dream. And in the dream, she saw three symbols. It was an order wheel from a diner.
Okay.
There were three orders clipped to this wheel. And she knew that each one of these represented some imbalance going on in her body that needed to get corrected. She asked me if I would help her to decipher this dream. So I said, okay. So as I'm in the middle of trying to help her to decipher what this thing means, all of a sudden, I had one of the most remarkable experiences of my life. I had what I can only describe as a waking vision, where suddenly the hotel room that we were in is not there anymore. And instead, I'm seeing this incredibly beautiful hardwood floor.
Mm.
So beautiful, in fact, it's the most beautiful floor I've ever seen in my life. This was high def, 3D. It was like I was looking down the lobby of this incredible old hotel, maybe from the turn of the century or something.
Okay.
But the floor was the thing that was the most important aspect of this. And I have never seen a floor anything like this. I mean, it looked like it had a million coats of polish on it. I mean, it was just absolutely gorgeous. And I've looked and looked and looked. I've never been able to find any photos of a floor like that. But nevertheless, it was right there in front of me. And this lasted for several minutes. But as soon as I started seeing this floor, this understanding was communicated to me that my wife's heart was underneath this floor.
Oh.
And I told her what I was seeing and understanding, and she had no idea what it meant. I had no idea what it meant either. So once this ended, I started muscle testing her and asking questions of her subconscious mind to try to figure out what this meant, because this happened to me while I was trying to decipher the dream she had had. So I thought, okay, this is something that has to do with her subconscious mind. And so here's what we found. We found that there was what you could call a wall around her heart. The symbolic material for this wall was hardwood. Now, she grew up in a house with hardwood floors, and she remembered her dad actually putting in the floors. But her dad was also kind of a rageaholic.
Okay.
He was a good man, very honest man, but boy, he was really a live wire and was always upset about somebody. Nobody ever knew who he was going to be mad at. It was totally random. And so it was a very unsafe environment to grow up in. So what we found through the muscle testing was that by the time she was 2 years old, she had begun to put up a wall around her heart to protect her heart from being broken, right? And so she had built up a number of layers. And so the question then was, well, can we start removing these layers? And the answer was yes. So this wall was literally made of emotional energies that she had built up, trapped emotions over all these years. And so we started working on these and releasing these. And it took us about 2 weeks to release all these layers. And then finally, the wall was gone. Now, let me tell you something. She had suffered with this wall. Of course, she didn't know it was there. It's a totally subconscious creation.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking in the beginning, she's had some odd things. She's probably the only person in the world that has this. Well, I'll tell you more about that later. But anyway, it was easy for her to feel negative emotions, harder to feel positive emotions. She battled with depression and anxiety, and she never really felt like she ever belonged. Even if she was with other women that she had known for her whole life, she never really felt like she belonged there. She always kind of felt like she was the odd person out, like she was kind of expendable, until that last emotion was released. And then all of a sudden, she felt connected to everyone.
Oh.
It was a really, really cool, really profound shift, right? And so I thought, okay, that's awesome. Well, pretty soon we found out that a lot of people have put up this heart wall phenomenon. And one of the next people that I saw actually was a woman that came into me not long after this, who came in because she had pretty severe neck pain. It was about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. And she'd seen a couple of other doctors for it and wasn't getting any help. So she came in to see me. And as I was talking with her, she told me that she was single. She had not dated in 8 years.
Oh.
She was 38 years old. She was never going to date ever again. She was going to stay single the rest of her life. And I mean, she was dead serious about this.
Is that because she had a really bad relationship at one point?
Well, that was my question. I said, well, how'd you arrive at this? And she said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy that dumped her and broke her heart, right? And so I tested her and found, sure enough, she had a heart wall. And there were 3 emotions, 3 layers of energy, emotional energy, making up this wall. And I don't remember what they were at this point, but they all had to do with the breakup from 8 years before. So probably grief and sadness and who knows. So I cleared those 3 emotions, probably took about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the most. When I cleared the last one, suddenly, poof, the neck pain was just gone completely. 0, from a 9 to a 0, instantly. And she was so happy because that's why she'd come in, right? Because of the neck pain.
Yeah.
The heart wall was just an incidental thing. But she left the office feeling totally fine and didn't come back. 3 months later, she walks back into the office. And I had wondered about her, right? And so I immediately recognized her and remembered her. And I remember this, she was standing in my hallway. And I said, hey, how are you? What's going on? She said, my neck has been fine since I was here. But she said, you cleared that heart wall for me. And that really works because she said about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're dating and we're in love. And I think he's going to ask me to marry him. Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. So you opened her up because she was so closed about any man, and you
Yes.
were able to open her up to get past the first bad relationship she had, and then she opened her eyes and
Yeah.
found you changed her entire life. How amazing.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Oh my gosh, this is what's driving this phenomenon worldwide, because what happens is, well, here's the thing, Zach, 93% of people have put up a wall around their heart and they don't even know it. Maybe from when they were being bullied as a child, or their
Yeah.
parents' divorce, or their divorce, or bad jobs. I mean, who knows? All kinds of things happen. Here's what's interesting about that story. Her childhood sweetheart had been living right around the corner
Yeah.
for 8 years, and she'd never run into him in all that time. Isn't that just weird? And yet finally, when that wall's taken down, suddenly love shows up, right? In fact, a couple of months ago, one of our practitioners told us the story that she was working on this elderly woman who really was a spinster and had been alone all of her life, never really in a long-term relationship ever. And now she's in her late 80s. She's in a nursing home. And this practitioner worked on her, cleared her heart wall. And about a week later, this elderly woman got a hold of the practitioner and said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know that I'm in love. There's, this elderly gentleman down the hall from me, and we're in love." Which is so cool, right? There's no age limit.
I mean, is the heart wall, like, is it usually around? Well, no, because your wife wasn't around love because she was with you. So what is it clearing most of the time? What do you? So the two stories you just said about the elderly woman and the woman that had the childhood friend around the corner, those
Yeah.
are both about love. What else? Like, what other things could be blocking?
Well, let me start by going back and giving a little bit about the heart, because back in the 1960s when they started doing heart transplants, it didn't take too long after heart transplants became more routine that doctors started noticing a weird phenomenon where they found that people would often come back to the doctor and report that things had changed in their life, that their taste in music, for example, or food or sports had totally changed. And sometimes they would have memories now, since their surgery, of being in places in the world that they never in their life had ever visited. And so what they would do is they would connect these people, and there are books written about this, it's really fun, but it's called cellular memory. And when they would connect these people with the family of the heart donor, they would inevitably find out things like, well, yeah, our son was a baseball player. Now you love baseball. Well, I guess that makes sense. Kind of weird. Or, our daughter loved Paris and visited every chance she got. And now you have memories of being in Paris. And so those must be her memories. How weird is that? Because you've never ever visited.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a crazy phenomenon. Friend of ours, big, tall, really macho guy, got a heart transplant, but he got a woman's heart. And after he got well, what would happen to him is his car would just kind of automatically pull into Starbucks, and he'd find himself at the counter ordering a hazelnut latte, right?
Wow.
And so later, and he also couldn't pass an ice cream store. He'd say, "Honey, pull in," he'd always get ice cream. And he found out that the woman whose heart he received, that was her favorite drink was a hazelnut latte. And she also really had a thing for ice cream. But one of my favorite stories actually is from a 9-year-old girl who received a heart from another young girl who had actually been murdered, unfortunately. And that's why her heart was available. Well, once she recovered from the surgery, she starts having the same nightmare every night. She dreams that she's about to be murdered. Well, it was so consistent. Her parents took her to the police. They were able to make composite drawings. I mean, she was actually seeing the murder of this other girl. And her descriptions of the murderer and the murder weapon led to the arrest and conviction of the killer of the donor. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is not at all where I thought we were going to go with this podcast interview. This is amazing. I mean,
Yeah. Isn't it wild?
I mean, does that surprise like this, the scientific community that this is, all these things that are happening like this? Like, because it's not your, like, if it was a brain, I would kind of maybe understand more, but because
Yeah.
it was the heart, like, I mean, I get the whole cell. It does make sense in some ways.
Well, there is a little brain in the heart, right? That's what they call it, the little brain in the heart. There's about 40,000 neurites in the heart, and it's
Okay.
gray matter and white matter, just like you have in your brain. And it actually wasn't until, I mean, and they've known about that anatomically. They've discovered that, many, many years ago. But it wasn't until the 1990s that they actually published a study showing that most of the communications between the brain and the heart are actually going from the heart to the brain. And they thought
Oh,
it would be vice versa. And so they think that, well, that led people to think that, okay, the brain in our heads must be obeying the messages that are being sent by the brain and the heart, since that's where the
yeah.
majority of the communications are going. And so that was interesting. Well, so the fascinating thing about this is, think about this: the ancient societies, the ancient civilizations in the world, all believed that the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance and the core of our being, really.
Mhm.
And I think that they got those ancient ideas from the things that they observed, the things that we observe too, right? For example, if you're really being hurt, okay, if you're really deep in grief, you feel it where? You feel it here, right? You
Yeah.
feel it
Yeah.
in your heart. You feel like your heart's going to break. Well, that's where those words, heartbreak, heartache, that's where they come from, right? And the ancients undoubtedly observed that as well. But I think they also observed something else that we observe. I mean, if you're listening to somebody, for example, like if you watch any of those videos, the really top ones from America's Got Talent or
Yeah.
Britain's Got Talent, and they uncover somebody that they don't think is going to be able to
Yeah.
perform, and they're all kind of shaking their heads, and all of a sudden they're singing like Caruso or whatever.
Yes.
They're truly singing, for example, from their heart.
Hmm.
When they pan to the audience, you'll see that people will have, their eyes will be moist. They'll have a hand or two over their hearts,
Yeah.
right? Because that person is singing from their heart, and everyone else's hearts begin to resonate, right?
Yeah.
And vibrate with that. So the ancients understood that, I'm sure, as well. And that's where those old ideas come from. In the West, of course, we've really totally ignored those ideas. But we now know through work that, for example, the Heart Math Institute has done, that there's way more going on with the heart than we thought. And we know, for example, that under certain circumstances, if one person's feeling love or affection for another person, their heart rates will actually synchronize, right? And they don't have to be touching. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on with the heart. And I believe that what the ancients believed was absolutely right. And I think we're living in the age of the heart where we're beginning to understand that they were right and that we have kind of forgotten about the heart and all that it's capable of. So, what happens then is that when we feel like our heart's going to break, and most of us have gone through that at some point, the
Yeah.
subconscious mind will begin to build a wall around the heart to protect it. Just like my wife's subconscious mind built a wall around her heart starting at age 2. There's no age limit. So, it's just so interesting. Let me tell you another story. There was a woman that brought her son in to see us many years ago. He was 9 years old. And what had happened was it started because his mom would come into his room sometimes at night when he was supposed to be sleeping, and he'd be on the floor. And she'd say, "What are you doing on the floor?" And he would say, "I don't deserve to be in a bed."
Mm.
And she couldn't understand what that meant. I don't deserve to be in a bed. And that was mind blowing. And then she paid a surprise visit to his school. And what she found was that if he did his homework, he often wouldn't hand it in. And sometimes he just wouldn't do his homework. There was something wrong, right? And so one day she pays a surprise visit to his schoolroom only to find his teacher in the middle of berating him for being so pathetic, right? Because she couldn't get any work out of him. And it was interesting because he kind of had this grin, like kind of like a grimace, sort of almost,
Yeah.
just pasted on all the time. He was like this. And so that was also weird. So she took him to see a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And she was told that he was clinically depressed. I mean, severely depressed. She was also told by one or the other of them that he couldn't be helped because he wouldn't admit that he was depressed. Well, he was only 9 years old, right?
Yeah.
So she brought him in to see my wife and I. We tested him and found he had a heart wall. And so we cleared the first couple of layers. There were, I think, 3 or 4 emotions making up this wall, this energetic wall around his heart. And each of these layers had to do with some tragedy that had happened in their family or extended family. So we cleared those. We got to the very last emotion making up this wall. And it was the first one that had started the whole thing. And here's what happened. He was with his family. They were at a family reunion at a lake in California. And he was there. His sister was babysitting him. And she was also babysitting this other little boy, his little best friend that was 5 years old, little first cousin.
Okay.
And they were out on this dock at this lake. And there was no adult supervision around. And his 12-year-old sister was trying to teach their little cousin how to swim. And unfortunately, he disappeared under the dock. And about 45 minutes later or so, I guess the divers retrieved his body. And his sister was there and he was there standing next to her. And they retrieved his body and pulled it out from under the dock. And of course, he was long dead and blue. And the crushing weight of the emotion of guilt that his sister was feeling for having this horrific thing happen on her watch was just overwhelming. That energy became absorbed into his body and immediately formed into a wall around his heart because his heart was breaking for her, but also for, he just lost his best little friend, right?
Yeah.
And sorry, I get emotional sometimes telling these because anyway, so that was the last emotion. That's what created the heart wall. We cleared that and that was it. There was no more wall. And so his mom took him home. So for the next couple of days, he was just kind of lying around lethargic. And she was thinking, well, it doesn't look like that helped either. But one thing that we teach people is that when we release emotional energies like these, it typically takes a day or so for the body to kind of process, right? We actually call it processing. And so sometimes people are tired or, whatever when that's happening. And so the morning of the third day after we worked on him, he got himself up early, got himself ready to go to school, got his backpack and his lunchbox and comes downstairs and says, "Mom, I can go back to school now. I'm a happy pappy." That's a direct quote.
Okay.
And so that little guy, his joy was back. The grimace was gone. He was suddenly normal again. He went into the program for advanced kids because he was doing so well in school. His learning disabilities were gone. Teachers weren't frustrated with him anymore. And his mom told us that if she had not been open to something so different, that she was certain that he would not have survived. And he now is 36 years old. And I think he's got a couple kids of his own, maybe more than that by now. I've lost track of him. But, think about that. I mean, that probably took a half an hour. And if I live to be, a million years old and never regret spending that half hour with that kid, I mean, think about that.
How about his sister? Did you ever meet her?
No, never did. And that's something that if she ends up listening to this, I'd be happy to work on her at no charge to clear, that energy that undoubtedly she has.
Yeah.
But see, and one of the things that we find is that emotional energies like that get trapped in the body. See, a trapped emotion generally is a ball of energy, typically about the size of a softball or a baseball. And what will happen is these energies will distort the normal energy field of the body, right? And so when you distort that normal energy field of the body over long term, 10, 20, 30 years, because that's really all the body is ultimately, right? Einstein, Tesla, it's just energy, frequency, and vibration. When you distort that energy field long enough, eventually, you might start to have symptoms. because that energy is distorting the chemical reactions in that area wherever it's lodged. These can lodge anywhere in the body, by the way. And so, if you get a trapped emotion lodges in your throat, well, you might end up having, symptoms. Maybe your thyroid might show up.
Yeah.
Trapped emotion in your neck, well, you might end up with headaches or neck issues. You get a trapped emotion lodged in the area of the liver, well, you might end up having allergies where you didn't have them before. Mm-hmm. Or you might have, it's going to affect your immune system, right, in some way. Trapped emotion that lodges in the reproductive system, you might not be able to have a child. You might be infertile. Trapped emotion lodges in the stomach, well, maybe you'll get ulcers. I mean, who knows? Depending on where they land, they can contribute to imbalances. And so, we're in the 21st century now, and we're finally beginning to realize the truth about our bodies. I mean, think about it. Quantum physics hasn't been around that long.
Yeah.
And that's telling us, about the real reality of our existence. And now we're realizing, okay, the body's an energy field. Energy medicine, therefore, makes sense. Therefore, Einstein said the future medicine will be energy medicine, right?
Yeah. And the funny thing about Nikola Tesla is he had so many great things that I think that we've ignored or that have been taken away. Yeah. I recently bought this device that gives frequency at night and it helps you sleep. And I have to say, I sleep so much better with it. And it's just it's 7.83 or something frequency. And it's all goes back to Nikola Tesla from the history that I've read about it. So it's really insane how everything really is energy. Like, that's people like you that come on my podcast. Like, it's changed my whole way of thinking about things and thinking, and it's kind of crazy how the world is such a different place to me after meeting people like you.
Yeah. Well, our existence really, to me, is kind of mind blowing. I mean, physicists say that if you could remove all the empty space between all the atoms in everyone's body on Earth, you could fit the whole population of the world into a sugar cube, right? I mean, we can't wrap our heads around that.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's the real reality. If they shine a bright enough light at you, your bones will make a shadow on the wall, and that's X-ray, right? It's just a really bright light, so bright we can't even see it. So.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. I guess my first question, do you think everybody has something kind of trapped that they should maybe process?
Yes. Everybody has trapped emotions. And about 93% of people we find have put up a wall around their heart. And if you see what our emotional baggage does is it interferes not only with our physical expression of health, but also it interferes with our ability it changes our personalities. It changes how we see the world, how we see ourselves, how we see other people. Let me tell you a story. There was a guy that came into me one day, many years ago. He had really severe back pain, about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. His next step was surgery. I was his last stop, right? And so I tested him and found right away, the first thing that showed up was that he had a trapped emotion. And the emotion was anger. And I traced it back, and it had occurred 20 years before. That probably took about less than a minute to arrive at this, right? Through the testing, which, is in the emotion code, et cetera. And he immediately speaks up and he says, "Oh yeah, I know what that was about." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." He said that he was working for this company and he was wrongly accused of, I can't remember, it was either cooking the books or embezzling, but something along those lines, right? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing quite as enraging, I guess, as being wrongly accused, and he was really mad about it and just furious about it. And he was so mad about it that emotional energy became trapped in his body and trapped in his low back for whatever reason. And so 20 years of having that distorting ball of anger in his low back, now, he's really in severe pain. So check this out. I swiped a few times down the middle of his back, right? To release that energy. It only takes just, 3 swipes, generally speaking. And suddenly the back pain was gone. I mean, it went from a 9 to a 0. And he's walking around and he's bending over and he's saying, where did it go? And he's twisting this way and that way and bending forwards and backwards. And it was just gone. And he couldn't believe it. And I was grateful, that it, that it worked. And so here's the interesting thing, though. Well, let me first of all explain this. When we release a trapped emotion, right, that ball of anger in his low back, what was it doing? Well, it was distorting the normal energy field of the body on a 24-hour basis, right?
Yeah.
Interfering with the chemical reactions to some degree, maybe the blood flow, the lymph flow to some degree, interfering with the flow of meridian energy through that area, right? All those things. And that's why when we released it, suddenly the pain was gone. And this is not at all unusual. 90% of all the physical pain people have is due to emotional baggage, to trapped emotions. And we've proven it over and over and over. And we do live events where I work on people at a distance, and they're in pain. I don't even like to take people unless they're at least a 7 on a 0 to 10 scale of pain, and unless they've had their pain for at least, a couple of weeks. But it doesn't matter how long they've had it, because when you identify the emotions causing it, 9 times out of 10, the pain is gone, which is amazing, right? Because, you think about all the pain clinics all over, right?
Yeah.
Giving people,
all these prescriptions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, so anyway, the interesting thing about this case is that a couple of weeks later, it was about 3 days later, this guy comes back into me for a follow-up. And he said to me, my back pain is still gone. I still can't believe it. It's like a miracle. But he said, I really need to talk to you. Because he said, when I came in here, I had another problem that I didn't tell you about. He said, for as long as I can remember, I've basically been what you'd call a rageaholic. He said, I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. I got to watch the road rage. Been to anger management a couple times. Hasn't really helped me. But he said, since you released that emotional thing of energy from me, he said, I feel really different. So things that used to set me off don't set me off anymore. I just feel kind of calm. And he said, how did you do that? And I, at the time, I said, I really don't know. He said, how did that work? I don't know. But think about it this way, okay? This is so interesting. This guy's got this ball of anger in his low back, right? So remember, it's vibration, right? Energy, frequency. So when a situation would come along in his life where he might tend to feel anger, like somebody cuts him off in traffic or whatever, all of a sudden, because part of his body is already resonating at that frequency, his body just falls right into that energy, that vibration right away, because he's already got that in his body just humming away, for the last 20 years. And so that's what happens. Think about this. The average person has probably 300 of these energies in their body. And the average person definitely has a heart wall. So as you start to get rid of those energies, when you take down that wall and suddenly your heart is open again, not only do people often fall in love, sometimes who never thought they ever would, but creative ideas begin to flow. People have success in many ways, not only in relationships, but also financially in many cases, because the best creative ideas, Zach, that we'll ever have will not come from this brain. They'll actually come from the brain in our hearts, right? And we understand that intuitively. And that's why when somebody graduates from high school, what do we tell them? You need to follow your heart, right? Follow your heart. But if you got a heart wall, that becomes much more difficult. See, when the wall is taken down, life can begin to flow for you like it should flow. Life, I believe, is really designed to flow for all of us, and it shouldn't be so hard, right? And when you get rid of all that baggage that's distorting your personality and turning you into somebody that you're really not, what ends up happening is people describe it as it's kind of like it's like stepping out of this old suit you've been wearing, your whole entire life into this person that you were intended to be, right, in the very beginning. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this work, I think, is that it turns people back into who they were supposed to be. And it also it opens people's hearts to love. And, people that die and come back, if they have a life review, I've never ever read or seen one where they were asked how much money they made or
Yeah.
how big of a house they lived in, right? But they are asked about their capacity to love
Yeah.
others, right? And that should clue us in on, a big reason why we're here, to learn how to love. And getting rid of those emotions really does help you. It increases your ability to love others, especially with the heart wall when that's taken down. Yeah, it's. I'm just really privileged. I tell people, I'm like the Uber driver. I just work here.
I have a question for you. I guess I could start off by asking, do you believe in kind of being reincarnated? And if so, do you believe that maybe the emotions from past lives also could be with us?
Well, I'm still not quite sure about that myself. But I'll tell you what I do think, because this question comes up all the time. And what we have definitely found is that when we're born, okay, we are not born without energies that are already trapped, emotions that are already with us. Now, sometimes those energies are received at conception from mom or dad, and those might go back 10 or 20 generations. And science now knows that animals and people will pass somehow down the line their traumas. And this is what that is. Scientists don't understand it yet. They're looking at the DNA under a microscope, but it's a quantum phenomenon,
Yeah.
basically. And so we call this inherited trapped emotions. Very common. But we also come into this world, we come to conception with other energies very often. And where are those energies from? I don't know. In the Emotion Code book, we just talk about these as preconception emotions. My own belief is, and what I have found is that we have been here before multiple times, each of us, at least in the capacity of an angel, a spirit being, helping to shepherd someone through their mortality. As far as reincarnation goes, I think that I think we've been alive, all of us, forever.
Yeah.
And so I think it's probably very likely that we, have been having experiences, because it's all about our growth, right, and our progression. And so yeah, I don't know, but there's no question that we come into this world with energies from before. Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So I almost feel like going and doing this should be mandatory for everybody, because I think it would be a better world.
It would be a better world. There's no question about it.
Like, I think that this should almost be something that is required by law in some ways for people to go through this, so people are more kinder and are living the life that they should be living in a way.
Everyone needs it. Absolutely right.
So the two books are the books to, and I've ordered them, I just haven't received them yet. Are the two books to teach people how to do this themselves?
Yes, they are. So there's actually three books. The Emotion Code book is the really complete book about the emotion code, and it includes the heart wall.
Yep, that one I ordered. Yep.
And teaches you different methods of muscle testing, getting answers, and so on. The Heart Code book is really our love note to the heart. And we talk more about the heart, about scientific findings about the heart, about what the ancients believed about the heart. The middle of the book is all kinds of amazing stories from people about love and business success and animals, because animals get trapped emotions too. So that's the Heart Code. And then in 2008, the Emotion Code book first came out in 2007. In 2008, one morning I woke up and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction was, you need to take everything you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make available to everyone everywhere. And so the result of that was what we call the Body Code. And that's an app that's available on the App Store or Google Play. It's called the Body Code System. And this book is really the guide for the Body Code. And what this is about really is it's about how you can find all the other kinds of imbalances that are going on in your body. So there's 6 different categories 6 different kinds of things that can go wrong in the body
Yeah.
that can cause trouble for us too. For example, pathogens, you can get a little infection going on somewhere, structural misalignments of any kind of tissue, toxicity, imbalances of, nutrition. You might be missing something, circuitry systems here and energies like physical traumas, emotional things, disconnections between the spirit and the physical body are in this area. And so this book teaches you how to find those energies. And all of these 3 books they're all how-to books. Yeah, because people have changed their lives and changed the lives of their family members just by reading the books and putting things into practice.
And can you do this to with yourself, or is it to help other people?
You can totally do it on yourself, and we teach you how to do it on yourself. You can also do it on other people. If you like doing it, we have a certification program. It starts with emotion code certification and then goes to body code. And then it goes to the next level, which we do not have a book for, but it's called the belief code. And in the belief code, we use the subconscious mind, the subconscious computer, to guide us to the negative beliefs that you've built up over your life. And then we're able to clear those out of the subconscious. Wow. Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, and now back to the show. Why do you think that I almost feel like you were chosen in a way, if that's the right word to say, whenever your wife woke up in the hotel room and you discovered this? Like, I feel like, why do you think that you were chosen?
It's a really good question. My wife and I feel like we're literally on a mission to do this. And so, yeah, I think I was chosen. I don't know. I'm kind of a workaholic. It could be that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I've had a lot of spiritual experiences in my life that have been very powerful. And I think that those are all included in these books as well,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've always been interested in helping people, and I've always been driven to find the answers. And it was really also a matter of prayer. It was prayer that got me into the healing arts and had a very profound spiritual experience that I talk about in the body code. And then when I got in practice, it was a matter of prayer too, because I figured, okay, God's gotten me into this. Maybe he'll help me. So every time I'd go to work on a patient, I would just offer a silent prayer and ask for help.
Yeah.
And Zach, I'll tell you, during those years, there were times where in response to that ask, information would just flood in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that didn't happen very often, but it did happen, which helped me to understand really that the higher power, God, source energy, however you refer to it, it's all the same, I think, is really truly aware of us all the time. And so we can ask for help and receive it. Ask and you shall receive. So yeah, it's been it's been a really interesting life for me so far.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is so amazing. And I just want to ask if you ever take the time, and if not, I would suggest this, which hopefully you do, because I feel like maybe you do. Do you ever kind of stop? I mean, you're a workaholic, you're probably always on the go and doing things. But do you ever kind of stop and just think about all the people's lives that you've made better and how the impact you've made in this world? Like, do you ever, and if not, you should, I would suggest, because it's amazing. Just the few stories you told me, if that's all you did with just those few stories, that's amazing. But think about all the others.
Yeah.
I mean, do you ever reflect on that?
Well, once in a while, probably not often enough. I mean, I just keep going and
I mean, you really should. It's amazing. Like, we need more people like you in this world that do things like this and that open their minds to new things and stuff. It's really quite amazing. And I think, I hope you do that more often and you think about that.
I'll try to do that more often. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, it's because it's just, I don't know, the energy you give off. Again, we're talking about energy. It's just so good. And I can feel it, like how good of a person you are and the things that you've done. And it's just really amazing that you've done. And I feel so privileged to have been able to help share your story with my audience and stuff. And because I think you're just changing people's lives, and I can't wait to get the books and just share them with other people, and just to, I'm going to start with myself because
Yeah.
I think I would love if there is something there. And like you said, 93% of people have something blocking their heart, a wall around their heart. And I want to release that. So that's the first thing I want to do for myself. And then there's like 6 people in my head that are my close friends that I think need this as well.
Well, if people want to get the Heart Code book, they can go to, of course, all these books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. And also they're all on Audible. But if you go to drbradleynelson.com,
okay,
you can buy a few books and you actually get a free Heart Code session, a Heartwell session from one of our practitioners around the world.
Wow. Okay, that's good to know. I'll put that. I will put that in the description of this podcast so they can, people can know to go there and get it instead.
Yeah. And also, if people are looking for a practitioner, they can go to our main website at discoverhealing.com. And there's a Google map of people all over the world. We have almost 16,000 people now that we've certified in 108 countries around the world. And so, but the thing is, you don't have to find somebody that's, down the street from you. You might find that the person you like the best to work with you is maybe in Singapore or Berlin or something, right? Yeah. And so, because this is energy medicine, it's not bound by distance in any way. So,
and can they do it in one session usually?
Well, it depends. I mean, the heart wall sometimes can be taken down in one session. We usually allow 2 or 3 sessions for that.
Okay,
but it depends. Getting rid of all your emotional baggage. I really recommend for people to learn how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
But having a practitioner. The thing about it is, Zach, what we have found is that a person can remove and release about 80% of their own emotional baggage themselves. Okay, It's not difficult. But there's going to be about another 20% or so that you're going to need help to find and get rid of, because and often those are things that are just so buried or that are so much a part of you. For example, one of the most powerful healing experiences that I had in my life was 2 years after the Emotion Code book came out. I thought I'd cleared all my baggage, but my daughter found an inherited emotion of hopelessness that went back 22 generations on my father's side. And when she released that, this background feeling of hopelessness that I had had my whole entire life was suddenly gone. And it was like the silence was deafening. I didn't even know it was there until it was gone, but I knew I struggled with it, So yeah, it is really amazing stuff, and it's so simple. Anybody can learn how to do it, and the instructions are all in the book. So
that's amazing. Thank you so much for being on. I will put links to both of the websites. So I think people should go to your website and get it so they can get the session with someone, with a practitioner.
I know, yeah. Why wouldn't you? Sure, absolutely, yeah. It's a great deal. Yeah.
I think what you're doing is really quite fascinating. It's amazing. I think that's, again, I feel like everybody should be it should be mandatory for people to start adulthood with this.
I wish it could be. That'd be amazing. Yeah, we change the whole planet. Well, you know what? I'll tell you something. The planet is in this process of transforming. And this is just one of the things we can do to help move that transformation forward, because the world that's coming is going to be a world that's going to be based on and operating on unconditional love. See? Yeah. So the old world is struggling, because it's in its death throes, I believe. And there's a new world coming as part of that. So
a lot of people that I interview actually have said similar things. Like, there's something coming that's changing. We're changing,
and it's going to be good. So
it's going to be good. That's glasses. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on, Dr. Nelson. You're, again, amazing, and I'm really so happy I got to have you come on and share these amazing stories and share this so people can go out and maybe do this healing for themselves. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Zach. Thanks for having me on. And if you ever want to do another show, we could do a show about animals.
Oh, yes.
That'd be really fun, because I got a lot of great animal stories. All of this works great with animals. Or we could do one about inherited emotions. Got a lot of great stories about that too.
Awesome.
So, just let us know, okay?
Yeah, I think the animals would be amazing. I'd love to do that. So I'll schedule that with you, though.
Okay, sounds good. Take care. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And be sure to go check out Dr. Bradley Nelson's website. And again, I will put all of the websites in the description of this video or podcast, however you're watching. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thank you again, Dr. Nelson.
Thanks, Zach. See ya. Bye-bye.